Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of What's Going On. I'm Nat, and today we're going to be talking about the G20 Summit that just wrapped up recently. For those of you who didn't catch the news or are unaware of what the G20 is, basically it's an annual international forum where 20 of the world's major economic powers meet in order to discuss international economic cooperation. And I'm not going to list all 20 countries for your sake, but you should know that the 20 members account for more than 80% of the world's GDP, 75% of international trade, and 60% of the world's population. The summit is hosted by a different member state each year, and this year it is being held in Rome, Italy, which is where Jack is currently situated in. Jack is in Rome right now, and that's actually the reason why I'm covering the G20 today. Jack got to deal firsthand with the traffic and the disruptions that come along with having an international forum being hosted in your town. Because of the disruptions and the traffic, it was really difficult. So she requested that I cover what happened at this summit. Just a little background. G20 was created in 1999 by the G7 finance ministers following the economic crisis of 1997. So if you're confused, there's also a G7, which includes Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK, and the US. And so they wanted to include more countries in their discussions of global economics and finance. So then they created a separate G20. This year was the first time that these countries met in person in 2 years. And so they had a lengthy agenda to discuss, which included climate change, the COVID-19 pandemic, a landmark tax deal, and global economic issues. So let's start with the tax deal, because this is pretty interesting. Leaders approved on an agreement that would subject multinational corporations to a minimum 15% tax as part of an effort to build a more fair and stable international tax system. And this new tax deal really was geared towards U.S. internet giants such as Amazon, Alphabet, Facebook, and Apple. So it's supposed to come into effect by 2023, since each country needs to pass national legislation first. So we can look forward to seeing how that all unfolds. The leaders also talked a great deal about the COVID-19 pandemic. Leaders promised to support the World Health Organization's goal of vaccinating at least 40% of the global population by the end of 2021 and 70% by the middle of next year. They promised to boost the supply of vaccines in developing countries, although concrete details have yet to be laid out for reaching this goal. Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping, who joined the summit via video conference, called for a broader global acceptance of COVID vaccines, noting that the vaccines that were produced in their respective country failed to win regulatory approval. Of course, this is an international economic forum, so global economic issues were discussed at great length. Currently, the world is faced with rising inflation, an increase in energy prices, and supply chain issues as a result of COVID-19 related disruptions. It's estimated that poverty rates have increased by 2.7% in low-income nations as a result of the COVID pandemic. So G20 leaders set a target of $100 billion for supporting developing nations. Besides that target, it was mostly just a bunch of leaders talking about how they're going to agree to keep working hard to improve the economy. There were not many concrete actions set in this topic. Finally, global leaders discussed climate change, and they agreed to the key Paris Agreement goal of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. And they also agreed to stop funding new dirty coal plants abroad by the end of 2021. They reaffirmed their commitment to provide $100 billion for developing countries for climate adaptation costs. And they sort of agreed on the target of zero emissions. However, they were unable to reach an agreement on the specific deadline. Many countries wanted to set a firm 2050 deadline, but instead the forum agreed on reaching this target around the mid-century mark, which is significantly more vague. So overall, what happened at the G20? There are lots of nice plans and goals set, a lot of catchy phrasing and headlines, but there's a significant lack of details and substance or any plan set at all. As Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi said, it's easy to suggest difficult things. It's very, very difficult to actually execute them. In terms of climate change issues, we can all look forward to the UN's Climate Summit, also known as COP26, which is being held in Glasgow at the time of this recording. So if you're interested in environmental policy, definitely keep your eye out on that. And that pretty much wraps up what happened at the G20 Summit. Thank you all for listening, and I'll see you in the next Minisode.